I'm Rachel Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we are the co-hosts of Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast where we walk through the ins, the outs, and the retcons of our favorite superhero soap opera.
But thanks to our awesome Patreon supporters, we are currently doing Rachel and Miles Review the X-Men, where we go through every X book that comes out every week. This time it's the week of August 20th, 2014.
Now, as you may recall, last week there were 7 X books. This week, Marvel has embraced the spirit of moderation, which means there are only 5.
Now, there would normally be 6. Deadpool vs. X-Force did come out this week, but since it's A, a Deadpool book, B, a series that was already going when we started these video reviews, and C, about halfway over at this point, we're going to go ahead and skip that one.
And I just want to say for the record, we do not recognize Deadpool as one of the X-Men. Neither do the X-Men. That's canonical.
It's true.
So there.
Okay, so first up, we have All New X-Factor, number 12. So this issue is by Peter David and Carmine de Giandomenico. Peter David was the guy that wrote the last run of X-Factor, where X-Factor was sort of a detective agency. This time around, they work for essentially the Marvel equivalent of Google. It's a company called Serval Industries.
He also, I think, wrote the best-known era of X-Factor, which was back when Havoc was leading it and it was a government agency.
Back in the 90s, yeah. So this guy knows him some X-Factor. This run, you know, the detective-y run of X-Factor is a tough act to follow, and that's very evident in this one. I love the premise, I like the lineup of the team, but it seems to be a book where not really as much happens. We don't see as much character interaction.
There was definitely a scene where Gambit was naked and covered in cats. That happened.
To be fair, that livens up any book right there. This issue, however, I liked it a lot better than a lot of the previous ones. It's mostly character interaction. The premise is that X-Factor is giving a press conference for Serval Industries. They're announcing that Serval has its own superhero team. There's actually one great bit of dialogue from Polaris. Fine, Linda, but folks, no name changes. No one becomes Fast Guy or Machine Girl or anything. It took us weeks to live it down when Guido decided he was Strong Guy during our last press conference, which, by the way, is my favorite X-Factor moment ever.
And the best code name ever.
Absolutely. So yeah, we get some good character interaction. If you like these characters, you know, Polaris, Quicksilver, Cypher, Warlock, Danger, and Gambit, for most of them, it's got some really good moments.
And this is in particular a really strong Quicksilver issue. What I think it's weaker on, and this is my bias talking, because these are 2 of my very favorite characters of all time, I don't think David's really got a sense of Cypher and Warlock, and that's, for me, really souring the book.
And we did see that, in my opinion, with Longshot in the last run of X-Factor. Still, overall, this is showing more promise than it's shown in a while.
Next up, we have Storm number 2, and man, Marvel is just killing it on solo titles lately.
Seriously, this one especially.
Yeah, this is stunning. It's so good. It's Greg Pak and Victor Ibanez, and this is everything I want from a Storm book. This is Punk Storm, but it's sort of a grown-up and more moderated Punk Storm.
Yeah, and I think one of the things this book does really well is it captures all the different sort of eras and selves of Storm. You know, there's that sort of punk rebellious aspect, there's the goddess, there's the lover, there's the fighter, the protector, the person who just really knows how to have a good time. I haven't seen Storm this nuanced, honestly, since the Claremont days.
And at the same time, that's kind of what the book's about. It's Storm balancing those aspects of herself and who she is and who she wants to be and what's really for her a new era as a superheroine.
Yeah. So this issue, it basically has Storm tracking down a runaway, and she ends up running into Callisto, which... Oh, Callisto.
I have Callisto feelings. I have Storm and Callisto feelings, and I specifically have awesome, rad, Barbarella homage, super butch Callisto feelings. And she's back, and I am so happy about that. And she's written so well in this. And yeah, God, this is pushing all my nostalgia buttons and all of my, like, dynamic, progressive storytelling buttons. Like, it's hitting every note. It's so good.
This book is awesome. You should totally buy it.
I know we usually say pick of the week for the end, but spoiler, this is going to be it.
So next up, we have Magneto, number 8. This is by Cullen Bunn and Javier Fernandez. This series, I like it conceptually, what it's doing.
It's very much Magneto noir. It's Magneto hunting mutant hunters, people who are abusing and exploiting mutants. And man, yeah, it's a series I feel like I should like more than I actually do.
I think part of why it's not really grabbing me is the storytelling is very decompressed. Not a lot happens in each issue. That does allow the art a lot of room to breathe, and it's very moody and very violent suddenly, which, again, for the noir thing, that works really well. But for me, it doesn't have a hook that's really gotten itself into me. That said, I love this visual conception of Magneto, and I love the broody, dreary feel of the art.
So would you say that this is a solid one, but maybe a wait for the trade book?
I'm thinking, or even, you know, wait to see how the series turns out. For now, it's not a bad book by any means, but it's not as strong as some of the other stuff that's out there.
And it's not tied into the central chronology and the big Marvel Universe stuff going on, so you can wait without major consequences.
Well, anyway, until Axis picks up, and then it'll be nice and central.
No.
Summer events. Can't live with them. Can't live with them.
Speaking of things that fall a little bit outside the big Marvel Universe events of the moment, we have Savage Wolverine number 22. This is the second of a two-part story by John Arcudi and Joe Quinones. And if you know those names, you know it's good.
Now, the way this book works is it's sort of would it be called an anthology? Basically, they have a bunch of different stories from Wolverine's past. There's no overarching narrative to it. It's just, let's take a look at who Wolverine was at various times in history.
So we can't actually in good conscience recommend this as an ongoing title because we just started reading it with number 21. This story was great, but it's over now. This is a World War I story about Wolverine with a small unit, including a telepath. It's cool. Arcudi is a phenomenal writer. Quinones is a phenomenal artist. It's everything that you want from a Wolverine war story.
Yeah, it's also nicely self-contained, which on the one hand, it doesn't tie into the vast tapestry of the X-Men universe, but that's kind of a good thing sometimes. You can just enjoy a nice war story with a hairy little dude whose life is really, really hard.
I wouldn't rate it as essential, but it's a solid book.
All right, so last up, we have Wolverine Annual number 1 by Elliot Callan and Jonathan Marks.
So what exactly does it mean that this is an annual?
So annuals are kind of weird. By the name, you'd think that every book would have them every year. But really, some books have them some years, and they keep renumbering books anyways, which means they keep renumbering annuals. It's kind of confusing. Usually, they're kind of skippable standalone stories. This one is a standalone story, but I wouldn't call it skippable.
Yeah, this is a really solid Wolverine and Jubilee story, and we haven't seen a lot of those lately, and I'm really, really glad that we're getting one before Wolverine dies.
Yeah, so this takes place, it's Wolverine and Jubilee's adopted son, Shogo, on a camping trip, just sort of bonding, and they're hunting together, and it's a lot of really good character moments between the two of them.
It's also a really solid Lone Wolf and Cub homage, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, and along those lines, the art definitely has the feel of that. This is beautiful, stylized, painted art that I really find myself enjoying, even though it's not really Marvel House style at all. The only real gripe I have is at the very end, it gets kind of weird and gender essentialist, but if you can ignore that part, I think the book works very, very solidly as a standalone story.
Yeah, just drop like the last two panels and you're golden. So as we mentioned already, our issue of the week, without question, is Storm number 2.
It's so good.
You
so
should
good.
be buying this series. If you like comic books and you like things that are good, this is both of those. Buy it. Super excellent. So panel of the week, my pick that I wrote down was all of them from this issue. So yeah, I couldn't decide. What do you think?
So for me, my panel of the week actually is from Storm number 2 as well.
Damn,
it's
Skippy.
actually two panels. It's a fight scene between Storm and Callisto that I think captures the energy of the character and their dynamic and just what a fight like that would look like better than we've seen in a long, long time.
Spoiler,
Check this out.
This time no one gets stabbed.
It's true.
Well, with Deadpool off the table, I think we're done for the week.
We'll be back next week with a variable number of X-Men books, but probably a lot.
Meanwhile, please check out our podcast, Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men.
You can find that at comicsalliance.com on Thursdays. The new episode, which is all about the Brood, just came out yesterday. And at rachelandmiles.com, iTunes and Stitcher, the following Sundays. Rachelandmiles.com also has a visual companion to this and every episode.
Thank you so much to the Patreon supporters who made this possible. And if you're enjoying this, please consider joining in and helping to support the show. We'll see you next week.